Welcome back to the Developer Marketing Summit. We're about to join another amazing talk, but just before we do, I want to say a huge thank you to our sponsors, speakers, and you, our wonderful audience, for making this event possible. With expert presentations and inspirational discussions on the agenda, you are in for a real treat today. Please ensure you are sharing your feedback and asking questions in the comment section of the video, as our speakers will be answering them throughout their session. After the event, a great place to continue the conversation is in the new Developer Marketing Alliance Slack community. I'll be posting the sign-up link regularly in the comments, so if you're not already involved, keep your eyes peeled and join the discussion. And remember, you can gain on-demand access to all of our exclusive event footage with a PMA Pro membership or Access All Areas pass. So with all of this in mind, let's dive back in. Hey everyone, up next we have another great live session. So don't forget to leave your questions in the comments for the live Q&A at the end. But for now, please welcome Gary Gonzalez, the Managing Director of Catchy.
Thank you so much. We're excited to be here. So welcome to the session, everyone. Big thank you to the Product Marketing Alliance for hosting us here today, and let's jump into it. So first and foremost, for those of you that are familiar with Catchy, you've probably figured out by now that I am not Richard Herring. My name is Gary. I've taken on the role of Managing Director here at Catchy as we've expanded the team over the past few years. So Richard's going to take it easy today. He's going to let me take the wheel, and we're going to dig into the top 5 trends in developer marketing. So first and foremost, for those of you that we haven't met before, we're Catchy. We've been helping to build, grow, and manage the biggest developer marketing programs in the world for over 12 years at this point. And in that time, we've had the opportunity to work with the best and brightest in developer marketing. And we also get to do quite a bit of work in emerging tech, which these days means we're working in Web3, we're working in gaming, we're working in the metaverse. It's a really cool look across the industry. And one of the reasons, one of the interesting things about our business is that we operate on what we call a hybrid consulting and agency model. And I say all of this not because you've all joined us for a 30-minute long Catchy sales pitch, but rather because this positioning, in working with all of these different brands and all these different types of work, it means we get to look across the entire spectrum of the developer marketing industry at any given time. It's a very different perspective than someone perhaps on the brand side who goes very deep on one set of technologies or practices. At any given point in time, we get to look across the entire horizontal scope of the industry, which gives us kind of an interesting perspective on everything. And in this, we get to do a lot. So our consulting team is constantly doing competitive benchmarking across the industry. Our research team is working with all of our clients. They're talking to developers. They're doing trend measurement across the industry, running focus groups, running qualitative and quantitative sessions. We have an outstanding market research PhD that leads all of these activities, and she's unearthed a lot of amazing insights over the years. And then on the other side, on the agency side, our creative and marketing teams are working directly with the best-in-class brands in the business to create content that reaches developers around the world. So again, I want to assure everyone that you haven't signed up for a half-hour-long Catchy sales pitch. That is all that we're going to say about Catchy and our work there, but rather to give you an idea of where these trends are coming from. Especially when we look into a lot of these players in the emerging tech space, spaces like gaming, spaces like Web3. This is where we see a lot of risk-taking and innovation happening. So it's a lot of what we're going to be talking about in this session today. The only other housekeeping item before we start getting into the trends is a big shout out to everyone on Team Catchy. I'm the one who's sitting here kind of going through all these trends with you, but the presentation, the information in it was put together by pretty much everyone on the team. So you're getting the full power of Catchy's team at your fingertips in this session here today. So without any further ado, let's get into our 5 top trends for developer marketing in 2022. So we're going to kick things off right away by talking about one of the big macro trends that we're seeing in the industry right now, largely as a result of Web3's explosion over the past 2 years. A good place to start when we talk about this is an end-of-year report from Electric Capital, which estimates now that there are close to 18,500 monthly Web3 developers. Over the year, we saw 34,000 new developers commit Web3 code, and that was in 2021 alone, and that was the highest in history. And when you look at the chart that they've put together, you can see that this is growing exponentially and has not slowed down as we've gotten into the start of 2022. It's pretty interesting stuff. And although this number, this 34,000 devs committing active code may seem relatively small considering the overall size of the developer industry, it's important to recognize that we are hitting a bit of a turning point in Web3. So blockchain technology itself has always been interesting, but investing as a developer, investing years of your career into it posed a pretty big risk. This idea of, is it worth leaving a six-figure job with stock options and insurance to bet it all on a technology that might not succeed or might not be around in a few years? And for many developers, this risk profile was enough to stay away. And it wasn't really until 2020 that we see crypto going mainstream in the big way that we've all seen over the past few years. And all of a sudden, this sector that had relatively low developer interest had trillions of dollars at its disposal to drive innovation. So now we're at this really interesting turning point where Web3 can offer top developers the same, if not better, incentive to move into what was once considered the Wild West of blockchain. And the result of this has been kind of what we're calling like the most destabilizing economic conditions in the developer space, or at least that we've seen in a long time. For the past decade, competition for developer talent has largely been predictable, right? It was FANG companies, it was a handful of unicorn startups, and everyone kind of bounced around. Developer talent really bounced around between those companies and those startups. But now we have this entirely new sector that's armed with seemingly limitless cash, and they're coming for developer talent. And we see that with the number of people, again, kind of spiking, as you can see in the chart, exponentially in the last 2 years. So what does this mean? Kind of what do we think is going to be the impact on developer marketing and on the industry in general from all of this? There's really three things that we've kind of been looking at. The first one, full stop, we're going to see increased competition for developer talent across the board. And this means that developer acquisition programs are going to be more critical than ever for companies that want to stay relevant and drive innovation. And that's developer acquisition as far as recruiting and getting developers to come work for you. And also, as we look at third-party developer ecosystems, again, increased competition. If you run a third-party developer ecosystem, a marketplace, anything like that, you're going to see a lot of increased competition for developer attention spans. The second is that developer relations programs are going to change rapidly. So as more and more developers dip a toe into the very community-oriented Web3 space, we're going to see a change. Web3 moves fast, and it's really accelerating the adoption of platforms like Discord and Telegram in the developer community. People are using new platforms, they're using existing platforms in different ways, and we're really seeing speed. Just because it is such a tight-knit community, developers are becoming used to a lot of increased speed and responsiveness from the community and the companies that they're working with. Really interesting one. And of course, this makes all of these new platforms and approaches much more important to DevRel strategy than they may have been over the last 10 years. And finally, we're seeing developer marketing in the form of content and education programs is really going to be increasingly crucial for everyone in the space. And again, this is a result of competition for talent heating up, competition for developer time, developer headspace really heating up. And this, quite frankly, is going to open up a lot of opportunities for DevRel and developer marketing practitioners as these new companies seek to learn from the best practices of Web 2. So we're not only seeing in these first 2 points kind of this shift in developer talent, but we also think there's going to be a big shift in the developer marketing space and the DevRel space as practitioners. For everyone here who's a practitioner in those different disciplines, your skills are going to be in demand from, again, an entirely new sector that wants to go fast, that wants to break things, and that wants to do cool, new, innovative things and learn from the best practices of Web 2. So decentralization of developers, lots going on there. And we do think this is going to be one of the major macro forces that is driving a lot of trends and change in the industry across the board in 2022. So from here, we're going to go a bit more tactical for the next 4. I think a good place to start is something that we're calling, this is playing out on social media right now, but we're seeing it across the board in a number of different kind of marketing channels and tactics. And this is what we're calling the importance of the individual. So kind of a really cool place to start looking at this, and kind of what our research team has started seeing in the market and dug into a bit more, plays out on Twitter. So you have these very high profile individuals. Elon Musk is a great example, who have these massive social media followings. Elon Musk, 76.1 million Twitter followers. But where the interesting nuance is when you start looking at these people compared to the companies that they own or run or work for. Tesla only has 13.4 million Twitter followers, making Elon Musk, a lot more influential in many ways than Tesla, which is pretty interesting. As someone who's been doing a lot of marketing from the brand side in my career, it's quite interesting to see that. And as we look at a few more of these, we can look at Vitalik Buterin, the founder of Ethereum, at 3.4 million. We see this trend starting to form. Ethereum itself only has 2.2 million Twitter followers. And this goes kind of regardless of technology that you're looking at. You can go into the gaming space, for instance. Look at Hideo Kojima, who is, one of the most legendary game producers of all time, 3.1 million. And his production studio, Kojima Productions, only has 438,000. For anyone here who really likes to get into the numbers and really likes to get technical, Kojima Productions has an English and non-English Twitter handle, but even if you still aggregate those and put them together, that still only puts it at about 700,000. So just in case anyone really wanted to get into the numbers there and make a more accurate comparison, it's this really interesting trend that we're seeing. But what does this mean? What's the takeaway? How are we leveraging this in our approach to the market? And it really is this understanding of how social media and kind of networks are changing in general. For a very long time, social media strategy was focused on this idea of one-to-many. You have your brand channels, you focus on those. You use a very specific set of brand channels across Twitter, LinkedIn, Discord, whatever channels you're using. You have one strategy for that channel, put everything out and try and manage everything through that one central point. But what we're seeing is this shift to what we're calling few to many, where you're seeing, and it's not even these big celebrity figures. It's not even the Vitaliks or the Elon Musk. We're seeing product managers. We're seeing lead developers, head of development, head of creative on game studios, on development studios, on technologies, amassing these massive Twitter followings that follow them from company to company. And so now what we're seeing is we're calling this few to many approach, where we try and have a much more expansive approach to how we're engaging and reaching with the audience. And in recognizing that it's no longer this one-to-one relationship of a business talking to another business or a business talking to its customers, it's much more of this matrix is the word we've used. It's much more of a matrix of individuals chatting with each other. And there's two different effects from that. One is top down. It's important to realize that your marketing channels really extend far beyond just your corporate channels, and you have this really amazing chance to engage individuals, thought leaders, program managers, product leaders, developers within your company to leverage that in an integrated marketing strategy. And then you also have bottom up. It's really important to target individual developers. You're not just targeting a company when you go out on social or when you go out and you're doing marketing activations. You're targeting all these individual developers and all of these individual business decision makers at your target company so they can help champion your product and service up. We'll actually come back and talk about that a little bit more, I think, in the next section. So I won't give away too much there. But before we move on, I do want to touch on what I think is a really good example of this. So this is Sean Lee. He's the most recent CEO of the Algorand Foundation, which is in blockchain. And this is all social that is pulled from Sean's personal LinkedIn when he was the CEO. He did a really amazing job of having this kind of unique identity for his social that went a little bit further beyond what Algorand did on their corporate channels, but it still felt really integrated. He still worked a lot with the Algorand Foundation to make sure that there was all the kind of right branding and messaging and markup. And what it gave them was this very unified presentation in market. A lot of the messaging was the same. A lot of the takeaways were the same. So you were getting a lot of really good stuff from Algorand, from Sean. Really interesting approach, really cool stuff. So moving on, one of the most interesting things that we always talk about is customer journeys. We work with a lot of our clients on customer journeys. And for a long time, we've seen kind of what you've seen here. You see these two different approaches. Gartner has laid out what we call the B2B buying journey, which is very focused on a business persona. Then here we have DevRel that's done a very nice job laying out like this really detailed developer journey map. But we're seeing that that's not actually working as well in the real world as it does on a slides, because at the end of the day, you really have two audiences here that are integrated. There, no tech stack buying and purchasing decision in 2022 happens unless it's an incredibly small company. It doesn't happen with an interaction and engagement between these two audiences. So what we've started doing, and this is a really oversimplification of how it works, is we've started researching and working on integrated builder buyer journeys, calling the buyer the non-technical persona that controls budget typically, and calling the builder the technical persona that's doing a lot of the research and validation. Obviously, that depends on what organization you're in, but that's generally how we look at it. And using them to identify shared touch points along the way. So what is their different levels of awareness? Acknowledging that. How do they come together to kick off and trigger a purchase decision? Then what does the research look like for that non-technical, the buyer persona? Where do they go? What questions are they asking? What is it and how is it different for the builder? What does their research look like? What does their prototyping look like? What does that feedback loop look like there? And then what are the conversations they have when they come together for selection and purchase? And what we've found is by viewing this as a more holistic kind of integrated approach to buyer journeys and builder journeys, is it lets you go out and create, again, more unified developer marketing programs that have a bit of a mix of both and allow you to have a shared consistent message, but that reaches the right audience at the right touch point at the right time. Really kind of cool approach that we've been using, something that I would recommend if you're not doing it already, definitely check it out and see where those overlapping sections are there. So as we get into the final two, one of the most interesting ones, and I'm sure this has been talked about quite a bit at the conference today, and this does flirt with the line of being a little bit of DevRel as well, is looking at some of the statistics of where developers are, where developer communities are, and how that's growing. And this is some data from the State of Developer Relations report. We've linked it in the deck by another organization. They do a phenomenal job. I would highly, the entire report is so well done. I would definitely recommend everyone check it out. But one of the most interesting things that's overlapped with some of our research as well is seeing Slack, as we know, sitting in the top 5 of most popular channels for developers, which is pretty cool in itself. But the really interesting nugget, and what there's a little bit more data around in the report, is Discord sitting at 13.8%. And that might not seem incredibly staggering, but what is interesting is Discord is year over year the biggest riser. It went from being just about 2% to 13.8%. And this is something, again, that we're seeing driven in these more forward-facing industries that move fast, like Web3, like metaverse, like gaming. All these industries, Discord is really becoming a B2B channel that's used a lot for developer marketing. For us, the question then becomes, why is this? And how is this something that we can leverage and our clients can leverage moving forward? And we really think that there's kind of a really simple explanation for why this happens and how to utilize the channel for best effectiveness. One, the desire for support and community. This is nothing new in developer marketing. Everyone here is not, yes, Gary, we get it. Developers want support, they want community. And Discord, Slack are very good ways to meet that, but it's the second 2 points. We think it meets that in a new way. The first is that speed of updates and response is instantaneous, right? It's very quick. You can reach out. There's always an active online community. You have a lot of the functionalities that you would typically see in a forum, with the ability to talk to the group as a whole, with the ability to consume announcements, news as they come out, but also with the ability to then carry on and continue to have these one-on-one conversations. And that in itself is something that happens very quickly on Slack and Discord, which is great. But that final thing that really differentiates it from a lot of different platforms is that it's niche and broad at the same time. And what I mean by this is that every Discord server or every Slack channel is niche. You can go as deep as you want or as broad as you want. You can be in a channel that's focused on JavaScript in general and go very broad, or you can go into something as niche as NFT development on the Algorand blockchain, with specific applications for gaming. You can go as deep as you want, but it's broad because it all exists on one platform. And so instead of a developer having to bounce around to all these, to Stack Overflow, to a form on one page, to a form on a different page, to a LinkedIn group, instead of a developer having to do that, they have the ability to have all of their broad and niche interests in one place with all the different servers and all these different channels, which is very consumer and developer friendly. And we're seeing that in the amount of uptake in these channels. The core takeaway here, if you're not using these yet, I would recommend you do. If you are using these, take a look at what some other brands are doing, especially in the gaming, especially in the blockchain and Web3 space. There's some really innovative uses of these channels for support, for DevRel, for marketing, for news and announcements that are worth taking a look at. And I know we're coming up on time, so we'll go relatively quickly through the last trend, and this is the death of corporate Memphis. So if we were all in a room together, I can only imagine there would be a collective groan in seeing kind of these very traditional, the flat, geometric, figurative characters that have kind of taken over the tech sector in the past decade. If you're not familiar, this aesthetic is called corporate Memphis, and it's become kind of the definitive style for big tech, for small startups, for nearly 10 years at this point. And we got here, there's really been this increased focus on apps and user interfaces in the last 10 years. And as such, there's been this big extension by brands into these online touch points to have a focus on utility of design. But what we're seeing is that the time of corporate Memphis, again, it's groan inducing. You see this and you're like, oh, it's another tech company. It's another platform. It's synergy. It's buzzword, buzzword, buzzword. But we're seeing this really interesting pendulum swing into a total different direction, into the abstract, into the vibrant and the colorful. 3D characters, motion, and shapes have come together center stage. And the current state of branding in tech and developer especially feels, for what we would say the first time in a long time, very exciting. It feels bespoke and it feels bold, often flirting with the line between digital fine art, as our creative director, Cam Agnew, likes to say. He always puts things a bit more eloquently than I do as a creative, but that's why we have him here. And in previous cycles of design history, people were really beginning to understand that in order to stand out visually, you have to avoid slipping into the familiar, accessible, and the easy. And so whether it's in gaming or any other area of developer marketing, we're now seeing this great opportunity to be highly creative, highly visual, and exciting with your brand. Cosmos is another brand that we've seen using this movement into bold, iridescent 3D design, and especially using this for a lot of their hackathons, a lot of their developer activations. And it comes together in such a nice way. It feels visually appealing. It feels engaging, something that we've seen a lot of and something that we're trying to lean into quite a bit with our clients. So that was a lot for me. Went a little bit over time. Hopefully we still have a little bit of time for Q&A. These are our top 5 trends for developer marketing 2022. Again, big shout out to the Catchy team for all the work that went into this. And we'll hang tight and answer some questions for as long as they'll let us.
Right, Gary, thank you so much. That was really great, really, really insightful. So yeah, we've got a couple of minutes now, so we'll go through a couple of questions. First one is, what are the most important areas to invest into in the developer marketing space?
Yeah, in everything that we work on, and if you could only choose one, in our opinion, community, this ability to engage with your developers quickly, to give them support, to engage with them one-on-one or in this few to many approach is in my opinion, the most important place to invest. Whether you're going to do that on traditional community channels or try some new things like Slack and Discord, I think just having an integrated community strategy that really integrates with kind of the larger marketing approach you're taking is priority number one for a lot of the brands that we work with and a lot of the clients that we've seen kind of asking that same question.
Amazing. And do you think the popularity of Slack and Discord will continue to rise?
I do. We have a generation, we have millennials that grew up on Slack. We have a generation in Gen Z that are very used to this kind of peer-to-peer instantaneous communication. There's this whole thing called media generations theory that like the prevalent technologies that emerge and stick around for the next decade are the ones that the current generations, the younger generations are using now. So it is because of that proliferation of Discord and Slack usage in Gen Z that I'm very confident that these are only going to become more popular channels just in kind of like everyday working life.
Amazing. And what do you see becoming the number one channel, do you think?
Short term, video. Any YouTube, I think YouTube is only going to continue to grow, or anything that is video centric. In the long term, I think we're going to see much more of these kind of platform based experiences where you can go broad and also narrow at this. I guess I did those backwards, where you can go broad and narrow at the same time are going to kind of take the forefront, especially when they kind of integrate different forms of media, written content, video, editorial, all of that.
Amazing. No, thank you so much, and really, really enjoyed your session. Obviously, if the audience do want to connect with you, is there anywhere they can do so?
Yeah, LinkedIn, if you want to connect with me directly, LinkedIn/Gary X Gonzalez is the best place to do it. And of course, check out Catchy on the web at catchyagency.com.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Gary. Really enjoyed that. And I'll speak to you soon.
Appreciate it. Take care, everyone.